Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I'm speaking with an amazing woman named Margaret Perry. Margaret is a licensed clinical social worker who works with traumatized families. She is here today to share basic tips for self-care and boundaries within our work environment and personal relationships. Her goal is to help women navigate the stresses of everyday life, as well as how to live a life that is fully present without the past overshadowing our relationship with others and ourselves. Welcome, Margaret. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing so good. Thank you so much for being here, taking some time to hang out with us today. I know that we are all busy. So I always appreciate it when ladies come on to share some of the nuggets of inspiration, nuggets of information that they have that we might not know in order to better help us navigate our life.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. So tell us where you're from.
So I live in Illinois in this tiny little town probably nobody has ever heard of, in between Springfield and St. Louis.
Nice. I love it. I actually grew up in St. Charles, Schaumburg.
Yeah.
I was there until I was about 23, born and raised.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time in Chicago. I thought that I was really cool because I had a boyfriend who lived in Park Ridge, which was like right on the border of Chicago. So I take the train down, and I'd always be like, my boyfriend lives in Chicago.
Well, I'm not originally from Illinois. I came from like Eastern Tennessee by the mountains, and I've lived here long enough where you think I'd be like used to the temperatures here, but you never really do.
Yes, it gets really cold.
It does.
For sure. Well, I'm so excited to have you here and learn all the goodness that's going on in your world. I love to kind of just start out my podcast with just a kind of a simple introductory question. And that question is, what has been your greatest challenge? And then what did you learn from that challenge?
Oh boy. Okay. So I think my greatest challenge is probably similar to what like a lot of people go through. It's just those repeated restarts where you think that you're on this really great trajectory and you're going to actualize all of these goals that you have, and then something just goes a little bit sideways. So initially, I would get really discouraged, and eventually I started to see these things as like a call to arms, like a challenge in a good way. And so it isn't to say that I don't still get discouraged, because I do. I mean, it's a very human experience and emotion to have. But our attitude towards these events can really be the difference between how we see how these things, perceive these things that happen to us. So that can also be a really big challenge as well, is learning to change that mindset. So I would say that probably the biggest lesson that I learned is that sometimes, even when we feel the least powerful, there are still decisions that can be made. And it can be really easy to fall into this place of darkness, and we may still find ourselves there sometimes. But learning our own strategies of how not to stay in that place, how not to live there.
That's awesome. One of the things that I love about having this podcast is our ability to be able to change our language to make things feel better for us.
Mm-hmm.
So you said the word restart.
Yes.
What does that mean for you?
Oh my gosh, I've had so many restarts. It basically just means that you have a generalized goal in mind, and so you start taking these actionable steps. You break that down into these actionable steps. I can do this, and then I can do this, and then I can do this. And then something will happen, and you really have to kind of shift that goal. And you're right, like language is so important. The words that we use, the way that we use them, it's powerful. And so I can give you an example. I had every intention of becoming like a corporate attorney, which I did not do. Yeah, I know. I went totally on the other side of that. But so whenever I was considering like my career path, I was looking at this. And what ended up happening is I found out that I was pregnant. I was pretty young. And so whenever I found out that I was pregnant and I was looking at this really long educational and experience process, I was just like, I'm not sure that that's like a good fit for me anymore, because now I'm very, very young and I have to learn how to raise a child while still raising myself. And so I actually shifted gears a little bit into psychology. I thought that would be a better fit for not only what my life circumstances were, but also in the direction that I really needed to go in order to support myself and my child.
Wow. So Restart is a substitute, almost I'm seeing it as a substitute of what some people might call a problem.
Yeah.
Or like a challenge. But you're deciding to call it Restart. I love that. That has so much more of a positive spin on it.
Yes. Yeah. So language can be really empowering or disempowering. And
yes.
It's about finding the way to phrase those things so that way they don't feel very cumbersome.
100%. So as you're going through these restarts, we have live listeners listening right now who are possibly going through something right now. Yeah. And they're pivoting, or they're having to make a change, or they're not sure where to go, or they're coming to a wall. Throughout your journey, from young till now, I'm sure you've gone through lots of ups and downs and restarts. What would you say, looking back, would be like a step-by-step that you're starting to notice of how you pull yourself from like a problem or dark place to a more positive space? What are like the steps that you now take that you can give some advice to?
So probably to be compassionately confrontational with yourself, which I know those words don't really fit together, but sometimes like you have to check yourself, but you don't have to do it in this very negative fashion. Like, oh my God, I'm such a failure. I can't believe that this happened. Like, now what am I supposed to do? Instead being like, okay, girl, like this is happening. What are you going to do about it? So you're still saying, okay, it's time to pull it together, but you're not doing it in this really hateful or hurtful way. You need to treat yourself like a human the same way that you would treat other people.
Can you expand on that a little bit more? Because I don't think people quite understand that sometimes.
Oh my gosh. So self-compassion is one of the biggest areas that I see people really struggling with. They're great friends. They're great employees. They're great parents and all of these other things. But whenever they're faced with some kind of issue that's happening, rather than apply the same kind of approaches that they would to someone else, they tend to really kind of beat on themselves a bit. So, for example, let's say that somebody got fired from a job. Right. And so your best friend calls you up and she's like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. You're not going to turn around and be like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. Like, what a terrible person. Why weren't you even thinking? But that might be something you say to yourself. What you would say to your friend is, you know what, this is going to be okay. What do you need from me? Like, we can figure this out together. Do you want me to look over your resume and I can offer you some pointers or some changes? But we don't do that.
Why do you think that is?
Perfectionistic tendencies, to be overly simplistic, but we really have this belief that because we're adults, we should be good at everything and we should be really proficient at it. And it's not true. Every time you're learning something new, you have to give yourself a little bit of grace and give yourself some time to really kind of learn and problem solve and overcome some of those obstacles that come up through that learning curve. So we kind of fall into this place where I'm an adult, I should be good at stuff. You can't be good at everything. And whenever you start to learn something new or whenever these things happen, you have to learn kind of how to navigate that with a little bit of grace.
Yeah, I agree. There is this lull of individuals talking so badly to themselves, and and I like the analogy that you're using as far as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we would never talk to our friend that way, so why would we talk to ourselves that way? Because in essence, we are our best friend.
Yes, you have to be with yourself from beginning to end. You're it. You're going to be your entire world. And so it's really important to nurture that world.
Definitely. What would you say is the number one lesson that you've learned about life?
Oh my gosh. Probably no is not a bad word.
Ooh, tell us more.
Okay, so we first hear the word no when we're very young. No, don't touch the stove. No, don't run out on the road. No, 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 no. And it gets translated into our brains as no means bad. No means I don't get to do what I want. But no is actually a really good word. No, I'm not going to do that. No, I don't like it when you say those things to me. No keeps us physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually safe.
Totally makes sense. What do you mean by spiritually safe?
So people have pretty strong beliefs about the way that they want to live their lives. Some people follow organized religions, some people have their own sets of beliefs. But basically what it really comes down to is these are the values that are important to me. And so whenever we come across somebody whose values are different, oftentimes we can feel a little bit pressured because they might be a little verbally aggressive towards us, saying, no, these are the ways that you should do things because this is what I believe. But just saying, I really appreciate that this is something that, you feel very strongly about, but it's just not a good fit for me.
Absolutely. I think that individuals do need to work on that sometimes, as far as being more comfortable working on no. Do you have any exercises that somebody could practice when they're just starting to set boundaries?
Oh gosh. Okay. The very first thing is to recognize whenever you have a boundary that's being violated. So this is really tricky because a lot of people have never put into words what those boundaries are. They have them, but they've never really set them with any kind of like intentional way. So typically whenever we're having some kind of strong emotional response, especially with anger, it's usually a clear indication that there's a boundary there that's being violated. And so it's really important for us to take a step back and say, okay, what is going on here? Like, what is happening that I'm upset about? What is being ignored? What is being dismissed? Those kind of things. So the very first step is to recognize that what your boundaries are.
Yeah. How does one do that?
The first step is whenever you're starting to get really emotionally overwhelmed or feeling some type of way is to take a step back first of all, you might want to kind of, if possible, extract yourself from that situation, because when we have emotions that run really high, so the emotional part of our brain and the logical part of our brain, they're not best friends. So they usually aren't able to really work effectively at the same time. And so it's really important to, if you're able to kind of be like, you know what, I'm getting really upset right now. I want to continue this conversation, but I'm not sure that now is a really great time to do that. So I'm going to need a couple of hours, or I'll call you back tomorrow, or whatever. So then once you can do that, you need to take a step back and say, okay, what was really upsetting about this situation? She said this thing. I know she was trying to be helpful, and on the surface, it seems really, really friendly, but obviously there's something underneath there.
Definitely. When, advice for the audience, when an individual is dealing with possibly text message that they don't quite know how to respond to, they don't know, they're feeling obligated to do something, what is your advice on waiting to respond? Some individuals have a thought process where they have to respond right away with an answer, or something bad will happen, like a wicked wish will come and attack them or something from the phone.
Yeah.
What is your thought process? What's a good amount of time that somebody can wait? Do they have to respond right away? Can they wait?
Oh my gosh. So I am one of those people that used to do that, where I'd get a text message and I'd immediately jump to it. You know, we'd get really conditioned to respond to our phones every time we hear it. Probably the first thing to kind of start to decondition yourself is keep it on silent. I'm not a super great person for immediate responses. I have so many missed text messages and missed phone calls and things like that. But if you're not wanting to do something, you know, kind of making a determination, is this something that I do need to do? Because we all have responsibilities. We can't just shirk our responsibilities because we don't want to do them. But finding out, okay, is this something that I want to do? I need to do? If I don't want to do it, you know, what is the reason why? And being able to effectively communicate that. So one of the things that I used to do is, and I know that we were talking about text messages, but plans with friends, right? Because our friends will be like, hey, you know, why don't we go out for lunch this weekend or whatever. At one point, I was working a really stressful job. I was working about 70, 75 hours a week. And I was on call a lot, and my girlfriends would be like, hey, let's go out. And so what I started to tell them was, you know what, I'd really love to, but I have plans Friday night. What about going out to lunch on Saturday instead? So the reason why that's important is I actually didn't have plans on Friday. My plans were with myself to go home, to straighten up my house, and then order takeout and crawl into bed and watch true crime all night, because I needed that time to decompress. But what it started to do was a couple of different things. One, it validated that they wanted to spend time together, but it gave an alternative. And two, it also started to condition my brain that now I've said I have plans, which is a commitment with myself. And so I didn't have as much guilt, because guilt is a real thing, guys. Like, you start to feel guilty because you're not doing what other people want to do, even though you want to do something different. And so I would even write into my planner, like, plans at home tonight. And then I would block out the entire time. And eventually that became really easy. Now it's easy to be like, you know, I don't think Friday is going to work for me, but, you know, maybe next weekend.
What a great way to practice.
Yeah, it took a lot of trial and error, but that was the thing that made sense in my head, because the job that I was working, like, somebody was always in crisis. And when someone's always in crisis, you have to be really responsive. But the problem with that is you tend to set yourself on the back burner.
Yes. Wow. And that kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier, as far as we are our best friend. So
Yeah.
we have to spend time with ourselves.
Yes, yes. And that's another thing. People are really uncomfortable with themselves.
Yes.
We kind of find, like, we'll spend time alone, but we're scrolling through TikTok or watching YouTube. We're doing these things that really just kind of check out. And so identity formation is another thing that a lot of people, struggle with. They don't know what they like or don't like. And that's part of not really having, that's another piece of, boundary formation is you have to know enough about yourself to really be able to do that. And I'm not saying that like scrolling through TikTok for like 3 hours watching somebody clean their house is a bad thing. Like, Lord knows I do it.
Yeah.
But it's not self-care.
Did you say identity information?
Identity formation.
Formation. What does that mean? I love that, but can you expand on it a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So identity formation is basically like everything that comprises you as a person. So what kind of food do you like? What kind of movies do you like? Do you like summer or fall? What kind of people do you want to include in your lives and why? What are your values? Those kind of things. And a lot of people have like these general ideas. Well, I kind of like this or I kind of don't like that. But we have meaningful and meaningless relationships in our lives because we're not really looking at what is happening, right? So values are super, super important. Knowing what's important to you, knowing your likes and dislikes, knowing how you like to spend time with yourself.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting to me, as far like if you were to ask me a question right off the bat as far as like what my favorite color is, obviously I know that, but there are certain things that I would actually need to sit. If you ask me, I would be like, I don't even know what I would answer that. So almost sitting down and having that conversation with yourself to figure that out for the moment, right? It can change.
And
But
it
to
should
figure that,
change, and you should
yeah,
continually evolve.
yes, that would be so interesting for people to do with themselves.
It's really
Definitely.
hard,
I love that though.
especially with people that are struggling like with mental health issues, because then you have those depressive or anxious thoughts that are kind of like surfacing up because you're not staying busy, you're not doing things, so you're not really suppressing them.
Absolutely. What does success mean to you?
Oh my gosh, I mean so many different things. So success, I would love to be able to retire in like a little villa in Italy or like a cabin. And I'm so sorry, my dog is barking. I had him outside, but he was barking even more. Or like a little cabin in the mountains. But that's kind of more like physical success. I think success for me is really just raising my children to be the kind of people that would be really important for them to be. So I want them to be functional members of society while still making efforts toward making societal changes that benefit other people. So if I've done everything, I've really tried to make sure that my kids recognize that they have the ability to amplify the voices of others when people aren't listening, to be a compassionate ear, and to lend support to others when they're in need. So if I can continue to work towards that goal, I feel like I would have lived a life full of success. But on a more personal note, I just want to have a comfortable and modest life.
Absolutely. I agree with you as far as the kids go. I think that's so important to make sure that we're setting them up.
There are legacies.
Yeah.
Whatever kind of values and morals and things that they are learning in their formative years, those really kind of set the stage for the kind of people that they're going to be. And it's really important that we do that carefully. Not to say overthink it, don't overthink it, but knowing how to be compassionate with ourselves and especially others.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, at what point are we good enough? But I kind of want to switch that, since you're talking about that, your children. And I think that it's what you're saying is just so important. How do you personally instill like confidence into your children, so as they're growing, they feel a sense of being good enough?
So, first of all, it's really important to remember you're already good enough at any point. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't like continue to strive towards, being a better person or having a better lifestyle. It's just that we really need to remember, and we need to teach our kids that at any given time, we are trying the best that we can, and make sure that we're really trying, but we're trying the best that we can in that situation with what we know, and what we're capable of at that point in our life. So I think as long as we can use that as to be a motivator for becoming good enough, I guess, for lack of a better word, I think that, shifting that from, oh my God, I still have so much stuff that I want to do, I'm not good enough, to, you know what, I've done things already, and I'm already like doing good enough, but I can recognize that there's still other steps that I want to take. But another thing, I was working with this client, and this was a while back, and something that this individual had said was something that their mother had told them. And I loved it so much because it was so beautifully simple. And it was just like, you can do hard things. And just kind of teaching our kids, especially when they get frustrated, it's okay. You're allowed to be frustrated, but you can still do this. Like you have the capacity to do it. And proficiency really comes with that experience, with that trial and error. But you've been doing hard things your whole life. You started doing hard things the minute you came screaming into this world and not even knowing what the heck was going on. You can always do hard things.
Absolutely. How do we know? How does one know? You said something, I don't remember what it was, but no matter where you are, or you said, as long as you feel as if you're doing good enough, something like that. I don't want to put words into your mouth, but how does one know that they are doing the best that they personally can do? Because sometimes we're surrounded by people that are kind of like, how does one know that they can't be like doing things up here?
I think that most people, even if they don't feel like they're doing their best or like trying hard enough, I think they are. I think that really kind of falls down into that compassion piece of it. If you're not giving up, you're trying.
I like that. Definitely. What would you wish for?
So I would probably wish that we could have a more realistic and accurate representation of ourselves in the media. We learn so much from the way that we're portrayed, or what perfect is supposed to look like, that I think it really perpetuates a lot of unhealthy stereotypes. We're teaching ourselves and our children what is expected through mass communication, that I think that if we aren't careful about the way we deliver those messages and stay authentic to reality, that it will continue to be problematic for everyone everywhere. I mean, and I'm not just even talking about physical beauty. I don't know if you have a Disney Plus subscription or whatever, but huge fan of the old Disney movies. But even whenever you start those up, they have a message on there about perpetuating harmful and hurtful stereotypes on there. So I think we need to be really more cognizant of what those messages are and be able to critically look at them. there was, I don't remember who it was, so I can't give like a little shout out to this person, but I saw someone on Instagram had posted a picture of themselves, and somebody had, it was like some kind of model or somebody, and somebody had said, oh my God, I wish I looked like that. And the woman actually commented on this comment and said, girl, I don't even look like this. And I was just like, oh my God, yes, we need to say more of these things.
Wow. That's actually really powerful. Did you see the new Pinocchio?
I did.
Did you like it?
I did, except for I'm kind of like an easy crier. I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm sad. I cry when I'm angry. I'm just like a huge crier. And so I did see it, and but I kept getting like a little sad because, of course, like Pinocchio's just kind of doing his own thing. And I'm like, you should listen to your parents. But I really like their inclusion of other people. And they're especially, kind of doing a couple of different things with one character in there in particular.
Fantastic. I watched maybe the first of all, it was my fiance's idea, which was so weird. And I kind of rolled my eyes. But we watched maybe 20 minutes of it. And I was actually like, oh, this is actually pretty good. But then he was like, this is dumb.
Oh my gosh, I would have made
we were just watching it together. Like we didn't, it'd be more fun if we had like kids with us.
Yeah, I didn't watch it with my kids. I watched it by myself.
Oh, that's great. That is great. I probably would have finished, but he wasn't hanging with that. And we only watched maybe like an hour or two of something before we go to bed. So, but maybe, and we always do that together. So, I'll have to find some block out some me time.
Yes. Yeah. It ends really, really cute.
Oh, I love that. I thought they did good though. I was thoroughly impressed with the graphics and the whatever they do with that stuff.
Yeah, I really like that they're being more inclusive in a lot of these things because representation matters.
Yeah, definitely. And Disney's doing a really good job. They've got a few things going on right now that I've been seeing on commercials and advertisements where I was like, I'm like, wow, that's a great storyline right there. That's awesome. They're moving along and they're adapting to the times, which is really cool.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely. I want to give a shout out right now to those listening live. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us. We so appreciate that. For those of you watching on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay so that we can see where you're at and send you some love. But I want to ask Margaret, what do you do for business? What do you do for all the humans?
Okay, so I have a small private practice in Illinois, specializing in anxiety, depression, personality disorders, but especially trauma, because all of those things are really kind of interconnected. I think that people interpret trauma as these big, awful things that happen to us. And so we kind of go through life thinking that, oh, I haven't been traumatized because I haven't had like this huge thing happen to me. But I think what a lot of people miss is that trauma can be really, really small. We can have these chronic toxic stress or these low-key traumas that continually accumulate, and that can manifest in the way that we interact with ourselves and other people. And so essentially what I try to do is work with people because the only way out of the forest is through. And so I just try to help them find their own path through that forest. So just being a holder of hope until they can hold it onto it themselves.
Yeah, I think one of the things I like that you're distinguishing a difference between the traumas, because that is one of the, doing the podcast, I talk to hundreds of women who have gone through stuff, big T's, little T's trauma. And what's so interesting is it doesn't matter what the trauma is. It could be small, it could be big. Most individuals who are on a healing path or not, don't view their trauma as good enough as the next person's trauma.
Oh my gosh, yes.
The minimizing of it is just crazy to me. And thinking like, because I'm not missing a limb, I don't deserve to have therapy or counseling or
Mm,
coaching, or it's not that bad. So it's interesting, like you get people who have not gone through like big stuff,
mm,
right? Who are like, didn't go through anything, so don't
right.
deserve it. And then other people who have, and it's crazy how, we minimize.
Yeah, it's that comparison can be toxic. But I actually had another individual, and both of these individuals, the one from earlier and this one, has given me permission to kind of share that little piece of it. But I was working with this individual, and they were like, I don't know. I just really feel like this isn't that big of a deal, and they were seeing somebody, and their partner has said, if there are two people in a pool, and one is in the shallow end and one is in the deep end, and they're both drowning, do you only save the person in the deep end because there's more water? Or do you try to save them both? And I
Wow.
was like, oh my God, yes, it doesn't matter how much water. Like, they still need help.
Yes. Well, yeah, if you can't touch the bottom, you need help.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good one. I totally appreciate that. But I think it's a good analogy to be able to tell individuals that it doesn't matter how you view it. If you're struggling with your life's purpose or whatever your vision is or whatever
Mm,
you're striving for, sometimes linking up with someone like yourself to get over those hurdles or view things a little bit differently. We were talking earlier in our podcast about restarts.
mm,
Sometimes just being able to speak your full story authentically to somebody can allow somebody else to attach a different word that isn't so negative to our
right.
story,
Absolutely.
or reframe it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot of it. But it's just being able to be heard
Yeah.
and to be seen in a way that is very non-judgmental. Um, it doesn't matter what people say happened or didn't happen. I believe them. Um, that's what I do, is I believe people. And then we try to look at ways to kind of change that. Because here's the thing, if something has happened in your life, or if something is happening in your life and it's impacting your daily functioning, it's a problem. So if you have the means to resolve that independently or with friends or family, that's awesome that you have all of those resources and supports. But for people who's got a little bit more going on, or people who may not have access to all of those things, there are people out there that are just going to believe you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Why do you do what you do?
So I started in this field about 10 years ago, and I was working with, different agencies and stuff throughout that time. And what I had seen was largely that a lot of these things are very reactive. They're not about resolving the issue before it becomes too big. And so I got tired of like coming in the 11th hour. I wanted to try to be like a resource for people whenever they start to notice these things. So basically, I just want others to know that they're worth it, and that they can do things that seem overwhelming or hard to do. Mental health isn't something that you can ignore. It can be really debilitating and prevent us from achieving our full potential. So I just want people to recognize the value that they have and to help them find their keys to their kingdom.
I love it. What are the big dreams that you have for yourself and the community that you're helping in?
Oh my gosh. Big dreams. So, from a pragmatic point of view, obviously I want to expand my business, but really what it comes is it's less about generating capital and more about increasing awareness, reducing the stigma that surrounds mental health, and allowing for ease of access to resources. So really it's just about making differences in the community at large, but even societally.
Fantastic. And where can everyone find you?
So my website is margaretperrytherapy.com. So there, yes, it's right there. So within the state of Illinois, I provide mental health services to those individuals, but I do have a Facebook page. I think it's Margaret Perry Therapy. I'd have to double check. Isn't that awful? But I do have a Facebook page. I post inspirational things on there. I also try to put little guidance, how to take self-care, like guilt-free self-care, how to set boundaries, what to do when anxiety is starting to become really overwhelming. How do you challenge those depressive thoughts? What kind of trauma responses can you have? Those kind of things. So Facebook, my website, those things.
I love it. I found your Facebook. I'll put it up
thank
here
you.
for everybody to see. Let's see if I can get it up here. Margaret Perry Therapy.
Okay, I was right.
There you go. Nice work, girl. Yes, so if you're already on Facebook, just Margaret Perry Therapy. But for those of you that are doing it through the Google, that's the whole URL, and it'll be in the description too.
Yeah.
So this was fantastic. I so appreciated hanging out with you and learning all the goodness that you have to share over there. Do you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I guess if I could say anything, if you feel like something is going on in your life that's a little big for you, I don't care if it's a therapist or your best friend, like reach out to somebody. You don't have to do these things by yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If you resonated, those of you watching live or on the replay with Margaret, be sure to connect with her on her website and her social media. We love to connect people here at Her Nation, and we love to watch everyone rise, right? If we all get together and we share what we know and you share what you know, we'll rise as a nation. So that's what we're all about here. And I so appreciate you hanging out with us, Margaret, and I hope to see you on our stages again in the future. Thank you so much for joining us here on Her Version podcast. This community is expanding every single day and is filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, be sure to reach out to me here or at hernation.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I'm so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others.